Hi, my name is Adam Shoemaker, and I'm rector at St. Stephen's Episcopal Church in downtown Charleston, back for another edition of Rector's Corner. And I'm very happy to have with me today Miss Gail DeCosta, who is a parishioner at Grace Church Cathedral and who co-chairs, along with me, our still relatively new Commission of the Diocese on Racial Justice and Reconciliation. And this past weekend, or I guess at the time of this recording, a couple of weeks ago, Gail and I presented to our diocesan convention an update on where things stand, and I thought that the two of us could do that for this interview as well. So Gail, I want to welcome you and begin by inviting you to provide some of that background work on our commission.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Adam. I'm delighted to talk with you this afternoon. And yes, so our Commission on Racial Justice and Reconciliation was established about a year ago now. And we had initially 20 plus members from around the diocese. Now, the first year, as everybody knows, we were it was COVID, and so we had to meet virtually, and it was a challenge. A lot of us didn't know each other, and so but we began the task of getting to know each other. And the first year, we really engaged in a lot of foundational work. We started educating ourselves about our diocese, about race in our diocese, some of the history, racism in our diocese, as well as in the world, and started looking at what kind of anti-racism efforts were already taking place, including in our diocese. We knew that we would be getting a new bishop, and so we were basically preparing for our new bishop. And in last month, in October, we had our first in-person meeting, and it was a retreat with Bishop Ruth. It was really I think, a very, very productive time. We got to know each other even better. We confirmed the name of our commission. We went through a lot of possible names, and we actually ended up back with the name that we had because we decided that it actually described very well what our commission is about: racial justice and reconciliation. We set some goals for our diocese, for our commission in our diocese, and defined three areas of work that we wanted to concentrate on. So the goals that we established, we want to reflect the beloved community across our diocese. We want to promote racial justice both within our churches, across our diocese, and outside in the world for all marginalized groups. We want to increase the awareness of the racial history in our diocese. We have I grew up in this diocese, so but there is a lot that I don't know. And this past year, I've started to learn some of those things. And of course, we also have a lot of people who didn't grow up in our diocese. So we all need to learn more about the racial history in our diocese. We want to enable racial reconciliation across the diocese, and start to build relationships and work collaboratively with other faith communities, not just within the Episcopal Church. And we also want to increase the stability of the African American churches in our diocese. They're not a large number of them, they're small, and many of them do need help. Now that's kind of a tall order to try to do all of those things. And of course, we realize we can't do it all immediately, but we can start to make strides towards those goals. And so in order to do that, we we established what we call three priority areas of work. The first one is education within our diocese. The second one is advocacy, including racial justice, and then what we are calling training and awareness raising. So for the education component, we want to provide opportunities to educate everyone in our diocese, across our diocese, about race and racism, both in our diocese and in the country. Our short-term goal, there's a program called Sacred Ground, and I know that at least some parishioners at St. Stephen's have participated in Sacred Ground.
Right.
It's a national curriculum. It's been endorsed by our presiding bishop, and it encourages honest discussion around race and racism. From what I have learned so far, the people who have participated in Sacred Ground have just really felt it was, I think transformational was the word that some of them have used. They learned about themselves, about their fellow parishioners, and were able to engage in honest conversations about race and racism. All Saints Hilton Head is one of the churches who has had a program, and I think they've done it more than once now and have a number of members who have participated. And so what we want to do is we want to offer that to everyone in the diocese. Now, how we're going to go about that, that's what we have to do in these next few months. But our target time frame is for Lent of 2022. So we want to have plans in place by then. Now, Sacred Ground is more about race and racism in general. So we also, in our education area, we want to also develop a specific module about South Carolina and some of the history of race and racism in our diocese. So those are kind of the short-term goals that we have and plans that we have put in place for the education piece of our work. Adam, you want to tell us something about the other areas?
Yeah, absolutely. So the second area of concentration, as Gail mentioned, we're titling Advocacy or racial justice work in the church and the world. And our commission feels very convicted that there really needs to be a confessional component to this work, just given the weight of the history around race and racism that we have in South Carolina. And that's why we need a South Carolina module on the education piece, because there's a lot to dig into when it comes just to South Carolina. We believe that one of the first things that our subcommittee on advocacy and racial justice want to focus on is acknowledging and apologizing for the history of race and racism within the Diocese of South Carolina. And so we will be working with the leadership bodies of the diocese and certainly with Bishop Ruth to put forward in time some kind of public statement of confession in that regard. This group also wants to explore possible projects and collaborative efforts that can happen around racial justice, not just within the church, but with other institutions outside the church, not just here in Charleston, but across our diocese. There are a number of institutions who are already doing the work, and we want to build relationships with them. And we want to also advocate for diversity in clergy and in all leadership bodies of our diocese. We are very far from that goal right now at present. And so we believe that that is also an important thing for our commission to be advocating for. And then finally, we want to work with our bishop and our leadership bodies in the diocese to respond to events that happen in the church and in the world. During this COVID pandemic, we have certainly seen the impact of the ongoing pandemic of racism in our country and beyond. There have been a number of events that have happened in many of our cities' streets across the country that I believe call the church to some kind of response. And sadly, we know that those events will continue to come. And so we believe that we want to be responsive to those events, because if the church remains silent in the face of them, that silence can sometimes be mistaken for complicity in those systems. And so we want to be able to respond spontaneously to the changing events on the ground. And then the last area of focus that we've identified is awareness raising and training. And when it comes to training, thankfully, we do not have to reinvent the wheel because there's a lot of training around, a lot of anti-racism training, for instance, that is happening across the church. And so we want to leverage those pre-existing programs to develop good leadership formation in our diocese around racial justice. We want to consider best practices and find ways to continue to form our diocese in the faith that we believe God is calling us to, that is liberating and that is loving and that is life-giving. So again, those are our three areas of focus to accomplish the ambitious goals that Gail laid out: education within the diocese, advocacy, racial justice work in the church and in the world, and awareness raising and training. And before we begin to wrap up, Gail, I wanted to circle back and ask you, we did have such a wonderful working retreat with Bishop Ruth not long ago at Grace Church Cathedral. And I think this framework we've put out is a helpful one, but it's also an ambitious one. I mean, it's a lot of work, and it's going to require everyone in the diocese. And I'll reiterate that in a moment. But I wonder, as we begin to dig into this work, Gail, what your personal hopes are for the work of this commission in our diocese.
Well, I am, well, starting with the retreat, as you mentioned, I guess I would say I am cautiously optimistic right now. We have a really great group on the commission, and I believe they're all committed, just as we are, to this. I don't have any illusions that everyone in the diocese is just going to, buy in immediately. But I'm very hopeful that we can begin bit by bit to tackle the whole issue, that we can begin to listen to each other, understand where we all come from. One of the things that I didn't mention is that in our retreat, we came up with it's called a hashtag, right? And as I said at the convention last week, I've never used a hashtag, but we have a hashtag, and I'm going to learn how to use it. But our hashtag is unity, not uniformity. And I think that really does sum it up. We do want to be unified as, as Christ's body here in South Carolina, but it doesn't mean that we're all the same. Uh, it doesn't mean that we all came from the same backgrounds, that we all should become the same, but we need to learn and um, to, as I said a moment ago, to listen to each other, and to, uh, appreciate the dignity in all human beings. And so, my hope is that we can we can we can take some steps.
Mhm.
Um, I don't want to say baby steps. That sounds too small, but but some significant steps towards our goals. So I'm really hopeful that in the next 6 months we will really start to. I think everybody in the group, because for the first year we were kind of inward focused as the commission, and I think everybody is now ready to say, okay, now let's start going out into the diocese and beginning to work on this. So that's my hope.
Well, and we do have a wonderful commission, and for those listening, our commission is made up of lay and clergy members from across our diocese. We've got a wonderful bishop who I believe is going to make this kind of work a real priority of her episcopate here in South Carolina.
Right.
But a hope that I have moving forward is that our circle really begins to expand, because for those listening in, we do not believe that the work we're presenting here is just the work of our commission. This is
Right.
shared work. This is work for the entire diocese, and so friends, you will be reached out to. We encourage you to reach out to us. Certainly those from St. Stephen's who are listening in, feel free to contact me, but we would welcome interest and involvement and folks who want to engage us in conversation, because many of these task forces, these small groups, these areas of focus that we have are things that in time we hope to involve many in our diocese in pursuing. So please do be on the lookout for more information. If you don't follow our diocesan newsletter, reach out to our diocese, to Molly Hamilton, our communications director, because there'll be information that will come out from our Racial Justice and Reconciliation Commission in that regard. But the theme of our diocesan convention this year was abide, and we had a lot of conversation about what it meant to abide with God and with one another, to find in our churches a place where we could truly abide, and we believe and we both hope that this commission will help the Episcopal Diocese of South Carolina to truly be a place where everybody can have a home. Everybody can feel like they have a place to belong and to abide with God and with one another in Christ. To really, as Gail said, build that beloved community that Dr. King so often spoke about. So,
Right.
Well, Gail, I appreciate you taking the time
Sure.
and appreciate working with you on this commission. And for those listening in, stay tuned for more on that, and stay tuned for another Rector's Corner. I'll be back next month with another topic to discuss. In the meantime, friends, stay safe and well. Take care.
Bye. And thank you, Adam.
Absolutely.